starting the cameras, guys.
Really angry.
He's like, I ran track in high school. He was like, they're working on that. So much work for them to do. Because we're just kind of like, oh, wow, I must have a full house tonight. You're right. Yeah, right. Why are
The June 21st, 22 meeting of the regular meeting of the Common Council is called order, and
Mayor Brad?
here.
Councilmember Murphy?
Here.
Councilmember Booth? Councilmember Lister?
Here.
Councilmember LaParche? Councilmember Carson?
Here.
Councilmember Harrington?
Here.
Councilmember Bradford?
Here.
Here.
And Council Member Ripley, lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have any commissioners here today.
So, I was here last month discussing the water issues.
So we'll just, I'm sorry.
Now, you know, 9 Suntress Terrace. And I was here last month discussing the water issues on Suntress Terrace. And I'm not sure if you have seen the solution to what's been going on for the past several years. I know the city has no money. I've spoken to Virginia Lee. She informed me on May 18th the city had in the water reserve dedicated to repairs $498,800. The sewer fund is much more flush at $1.5 million. How you got there doesn't matter. The point is where we are now. This has been the solution to our rusty water. This is College Terrace, and you can pass it around. They've put a valve that's, I don't know, probably puts out water at about 10 gallons a minute instead of 1,500 gallons a minute. Now that runs for 3 hours a day. This is the one on Suncrest Terrace that goes into the drain, a storm cellar. If you figure that each one of these runs for 3 hours a day, 10 gallons a minute would be the lowest amount if you were there to watch it. You're talking 3,600 gallons a day that we are flushing down a city sewer drain. Storm cellar. Because over the years, even though we've had lots of people from Suncrest Terrace come up here, they can't seem to find a way to fix it because it costs money. Last month I was here and $1.9 million was spent on an RFQ for the design of the new Market Street transportation. I'm not saying that's not needed. I'm just saying that somewhere you must talk about water. I put in a water filter for my house. This is supposed to last from city water. They told me, oh, maybe 2 months. This is 2 weeks. It's rust. That's what the rust and dirt is what we get here. Aside from the city flushing down the drain at least 3,600 gallons a day, that's not sustainable, folks. This is water that's been processed, that's coming through our tanks, that you're throwing down the sewer. On one of the pictures on College Terrace, you can see that it's now where the water's coming out, there's no storm cellar. So it's now broken up the pavement. When I spoke with Virginia Lee, who was lovely, she told me the city had approximately $6 million worth of water repairs. it could be as high as 8, and has $498,000 in the reserve fund. I don't know, when it's the end of the year, if you have fund balances, maybe you might want to think of putting it, or contingency fund balances, putting it into your water problems. West Street had 3 water breaks 2 weekends ago. You had one in Cleveland West, you had one on Upper West, you had one in Ravine West. Obviously, that's a problem. It's not it's not my street. Oh, you can keep them, I don't care, you can look at them. I see this every day out my window. Look at it, review it. I called several places to find out what funding is available. Someone called me to tell me that they spoke with Brian Miller's office, and I think I passed that information on to Lynn, and he said he was going to pass it on about grants. I really think you have to take this a little bit more seriously than you have in the past. I cannot file I looked into it, in all honesty. I can't file a class action suit because you have to have a court accepted first, and that would be a tremendous expense for us, our community on the Hill, to undertake. However, we can undertake a neighborhood kind of lawsuit. I really don't want to go there. I live here, I'm a resident. That's not what we want to do. We just want a solution to this problem. And whether, I know it's only a mile, at least that's what they tell me, it's only a mile, but they say it's $2 million. Maybe there's another way that you can somehow, that's cheaper, maybe bring in somebody who knows about these things. It's the same situation that you folks had with Riverside School, not you individually, but the city of Oneonta, obviously, with Riverside School in the 90s. That's how long we've had this problem. But we're not a school. I understand schools come first. But we are a development up there. And we need help. And apparently, we're not getting it. And I mean, you're really putting us against a wall. This flushing of the lines is not the answer, as you can see by the filter. That's not doing it. Plus, it's wasting water, which is ridiculous. That's not sustainable. So I've come again to request, I know it's the end of the year and the fiscal year starts July 1 and everything's been funded, but again, and if you call the water department, they're lovely. The first thing they do is come and they flush the lines that day, again, because they're on a timer and they go 3 hours a day, but if you call, they'll come up and reflush to keep it moving. But that's not what they should be doing. You have an infrastructure problem with a very old city and old pipes. Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 years old, or our pipes, maybe older, I'm not sure. And they've not been repaired. Somehow you have to prioritize where you're going to start. And so far, we haven't seen that happen. And I'm requesting that you start with priorities. And drinking water is a priority. And while you may have other streets that need repair, and I'm not saying they don't, if those people have drinking water and the pipes aren't breaking constantly, then that's not a priority. Start with where your issues are. And this is an issue.
Thank you, ma'am. We will, and we are looking into this. If there are any additional petitioners? Then we'll start with our boards and commission reports. The Planning Commission, Councilmember Risberger.
Yes, thank you. I see that on our agenda it says I'm reporting on the May and June meetings. I was not at the May meeting, which I had said at a previous council meeting, but I went in and I'll read what occurred from the minutes of that meeting. There were two items. 19 Molly Avenue, the owners wish to demolish an existing garage and replace it with a new one. That was approved by the Planning Commission, and the owner at 157 Chestnut Street, Noliana, was looking to do a lot line adjustment. I believe this went through their parking lot, and that was also approved by the Planning Commission. And there were a series of recommendations from the Planning Commission to the Common Council, which I'll go over in a minute. So that was at the May meeting. The June meeting, there were three items. Three of our Greek organizations were looking to receive a special use permit. Phi Kappa Psi was up first. That's 56 Maple Street. 9 to 10 students will be living there, and they had a certificate of compliance. This was deemed a type 2 action, and that was approved, so the special use permit was approved. The Tau Kappa Epsilon at 61 Elm Street, 10 students will be living there. And this is according to the fraternity, what they told us. They have a C2C, it's a type 2 action which is approved, and the special use permit was approved. And the last one was Alpha Sigma Phi at 6971 Spruce Street. 7 students are living there, but they're looking to build a dormer so the attic can be finished, so more can live there. They do not have the certificate of compliance yet, so that was tabled. Apparently their fire alarm is not working properly, and they've been working with Johnson Controls to get this taken care of. And in other business, the recommendations were discussed again. There were 4. The first one was having the special use permit process go through Common Council rather than through the Planning Commission. So they would be issued an operating permit rather than a special use permit. So this is something that's already being introduced to the Legislative Committee. So we will be discussing that at that committee. Second one was to amend the code to allow for administrative review of garage demolitions. And third, amend the code to allow for administrative review of subdivisions or lot splits or line adjustments, which that one came from that one item at 157 Chestnut Street. And the last one was a bigger one. This is revisit the subject of obtaining a certified local government status for the city. This is done through SHPO. This was discussed briefly last year, and apparently it did not go anywhere, but I don't remember it not going anywhere. I don't remember if anybody here remembers further discussions, but it seemed to just sort of was dropped. And this would, by obtaining the status of the city, it provides technical assistance to communities to assist with preserving historic properties. So it can help with historic tax credits. It will restrict what you can do with buildings. It will prevent some buildings from, let's say you've got a 100-year-old decorative railing that you want replaced or needs replacement, and instead you decide to do the cheap way and throw a 2x4 up and call that a railing. This won't let you do that. The city could ticket you if you do something like that. We have to establish a historic preservation board to do this. The downside of it is the fear is that it would scare developers away. I have a feeling this is why this idea kind of disappeared last year. But many communities around New York State have this. And it's not just Cooperstown. Seneca Falls, Saratoga Springs, Pittsburgh, New York, and each of those areas developers are scared away. Now, Now, the difference between this and a national historic district, which we have 2 historic districts currently, and we're looking to potentially expand that. A historic district helps you get tax credits for work that you want to do on the house or the building, but that's it. A certified local government status gives you the opportunity for tax credits, but it also gives teeth to prevent people from allowing historic properties to deteriorate. As I said before, replace old parts with cheap parts that don't match the house, or allow for demolition by neglect, which is something that has come up in the past. So I think it's worthwhile having that discussion. I think that that's something that could help on it would. I think if we're going forward with developing more historic districts, I think what we're looking to accomplish, we're not really going to accomplish by just doing the historic districts. I think this is something that would allow us to accomplish that preservation of the city like we're looking to do. So, just my thoughts, and I think we'll have interesting discussions about it in the future. So,
Anybody have thoughts, comments, questions for you? Look, Lynn.
So, when did we talk about it last year?
honestly, I remember vaguely talking about it, and the reason that this came up is because I was actually checking on the historic, historic districts conversation, and I talked with Stephen. Right, and I talked with Stephen about it. I think he misunderstood what I was asking and started talking about this and how it disappeared, and I thought he meant the historic district, that we weren't working on that anymore. And so when we had, it just so happened that the planning commission decided to go in depth about this at their meeting, which I'm glad they did. And then Stephen was there, so we all made sure we were on the same page. I have a feeling what happened was when it was brought forward to somebody that could bring it further forward to the council, they were nervous about the whole developer thing, and so they kind of pushed it aside for them. Because I don't remember it coming to legislative committee or any other council committee.
Sorry to
So,
come but
yeah, I don't
being on the
remember.
legislative last year, we definitely didn't talk about
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So I think it's I think it's worthwhile to talk about. So.
And so, just to, that, I think this is part of the topic that Louise Johnson Schmidt is going to come and talk to us about.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, thank you very much. All right, moving on to Councilmember Raptor and the Zoning and Housing Board of Appeals.
We met on June 13. The topic for discussion was special use permits for Greek organizations. It has something to do with David's son as well. There was a recommendation regarding primarily who and how special use permits are handled. Right now, pre-existing or non-conforming provisions are read by the planning committee. Steve Yearly made a recommendation to modify that process so that the code office would make sure that the application assets for special use of for Greek or for fraternity or sorority houses would be made through a review by the code enforcement office to make sure that they were meeting the criteria. The upshot of the meeting was that Steve Yearly is going to review the existing code and bring a proposed language change or proposed changes to the legislation committee at our next meeting, and gives us a chance to have some concrete recommendations in front of us, and that are in conformance with the way a code officer would look at essentially the use of fraternity as along the same lines as having more than 3 residents in a single-family home or building. David?
Just to tack on to what you were saying, right now we've got, I think, 5 Greek organizations in the city, and there's, 2 or 3 different ways that they get approved because of where they are. I think one lies in the new NU1 district, so the rules are slightly changed. So basically, this would issuing an operating permit would make all 5 of them be approved the same way. And so they would make sure all their ducks are in a row through the code office, and then they would come to the entire council to have a discussion. Part of that was that you may have, if you come to the full council, you're guaranteed somebody on the council has that Greek organization in their ward. So there's somebody that can voice an opinion of whether there's great things happening or some changes that need to be made. So.
John, anything further?
No.
Okay. Any additional conversation, questions for John? Thank you very much, John. Moving on to our Commission on Community Relations and Human Rights, and that would be Councilmember Murphy. Thank you.
Like Councilmember Risberger, I was unable to attend that meeting. However, I did watch the video on YouTube from the recordings, and it was they had met in May, at the end of May, last Thursday in May, and most of the discussion was around looking at boosting attendance and participation in Trailways Road Word. It was a very well-attended event this year. We'd love to see it grow. And this was immediately, or a little bit prior to Juneteenth, which happened Sunday. Was it Sunday? Mm-hmm. Sunday. And I heard from the organizer, or the chief organizer, DeAndre Singer Daniels, that it went very well.
Anything else, Blue? No, thank you very much. And moving on to our Parks and Recreation Commission, Steve?
Sure. Let me just get to that spot in my notebook. Nope, that's Parks. Okay. Parks and Rec met on June 6th, immediately following our last common council meeting. We had a couple of people as petitioners. Actually, only one of them showed up. The event has since passed, but it was, and I'm going to butcher her name, Ari Tobiaino. Anyone? Okay. She wanted to have, she is a not-for-profit, and she wanted to have a family carnival in the Neowell Park Large Pavilion, which would basically guide 5th graders into social responsibility. She gave a PowerPoint presentation on that, sort of just explained the gist of the event. That was very well received, and it seems like a really nice, service for the community to have that conversation with our young people. So everyone was excited about that. There was something, and that is also passed, so I'm not sure if that actually happened, but a personal trainer wanted to have a fitness class on Veterans Memorial Walkway on June 11th. Oh, and August 13th. I'm just trying to read my own notes here. She didn't come, so Parks Administrator Lansing gave us kind of a report of what she wanted to do. And there were a couple of questions, so that didn't really go anywhere. We got a request from Baseball World to supply an L screen, which apparently protects a pitcher from, like, they throw and it protects them from getting hit with the return ball. They were under the impression that we have one. If we did, we no longer do. And so we was going to maybe see if there was somewhere, and they're not very expensive, somewhere in the budget, just one of those for use, rental type thing. The city has been gifted, is that right? Some Liberty Elms? Were they gifted?
We purchased them.
We purchased them, but we're looking at where to place them in city parks. Cool. We also had an update on, I just wrote Liberty Elms, so I'm trying to remember 3 weeks ago what that was like. We also discussed briefly Neola Park's oldest tree, which according to the arborist via Lou is in good shape and will continue to stand. We discussed further disc golf. There was some correspondence from someone who was kind of disappointed that the commission didn't think that disc golf in Wilbur Park was a great idea. I also mentioned that in my last report that when I had said disc golf, there seemed to be like some excitement from council a little bit about that. Just generally, the more that we sort of learn about it, it's like needs a lot of space and it's kind of an active thing. And you know, the Neola Park is kind of, aside from the sportsy areas that are defined for that, is sort of a passive, sort of natural park. And so the commission does not feel like that would be a good addition to the park. That was re-emphasized, and we did find out that the Oneonta Sports Park has a 9-hole disc golf course, which is just outside of town. There was groundbreaking on the mill race improvements at the mill race trail for the improvements. So we were just notified of that. There is going to be a movie night this Friday, right? In the park for families. We're going to play in Encanto, which would be cool. And that is a collaboration between Hardwick, DO, the Parks and the City, Huntington Library, and Mayor Dronick, who's lending something from his like personal audiovisual collection to be able to make that happen. So thank you for that. We got an update on the summer concert series. Our city administrator had shared with our parks administrator something interesting that he found, which was a report on our park score, which has to do with walkability of city parks and the accessibility of city parks for residents within a 10-minute walk. The park score says that 49% of our population live within a 10-minute walk to a city park. It did not include Maple Street Park. And yeah, just some of like the smaller park areas, so that number may actually be a little bit higher. And that was just provided sort of FYI. There's some interest in having a little bit more of an ongoing idea of the conditions on bike trails, and so Lou is going to partner with the bike community to get more sort of like up to the minute, how are the trails doing things, information, so that like we can get out there to like New Island, for example, which is sort of hard to get to, and like help out if we need to do that. Oh, I'm going to say this in a public meeting that is on YouTube for everyone. If a park user, they have a permit and they're there with like a field reservation or something like that, and they have an issue, there's a number on the permit to call to get help on that day. So call the number on your permit. We discussed the Willow Park survey a little bit. That was sort of a more casual conversation. We did have, I think there will be more conversation, I know there will be more conversation on that at future meetings, but we did talk about Fairyland a little bit. I have personally fielded some concerns about Fairyland, mostly that it's like sort of plastic trinkets that, so like it's cute, but you know, who is maintaining it, and sometimes they're just like running off and being litter, and people have stopped like walking their dogs through there because their dogs will like pick up a little trinket or whatever. So we talked about ways to maybe maintain Fairyland, but make it a little bit more eco-friendly, sort of in line with the vision of the park, to use like more natural materials, and that would sort of, I think, solve a lot of those problems. So we were going to look into partnering with maybe Huntington Library to do like make something for Fairyland, and have them use natural materials, sticks and moss and wood and stuff like that. And then also the Otsego County Conservation Association. And also with the Otsego County Conservation Association, we were talking about adding some nature education, nature learning into Wilbur Park about like the natural habitat that's there. That was actually a pretty long conversation. And so there'll be more on that to come because we want to make sure that whatever we do is not, intrusive to the space in any way so that people can still maintain that connection with nature. But maybe, be able to identify trees and birds and natural processes and things like that. So, more on that to come. That's it.
Concludes that.
That's everything, yep.
Does anyone have any questions for Councilor Schiff? Very appropriate,
Really?
as
Okay.
usual.
Yep.
And now, moving on to yet another report.
Another section of my big notebook.
Our Public Arts Commission.
Yeah, Public Art met on June 8th. I was not able to be there. I don't remember why. But I watched the video on YouTube today, so I can take you all through it. So the first topic was discussion of the nearly complete master plan that has been forwarded to me and Mayor Drummond. We both had an opportunity to take a look at it. I think it's really almost in final form to be able to come to council. There was some discussion of a way to honor famous Oneontans, maybe through a sculpture trail, maybe through murals. And also sort of who should be included, what's that criteria as people who were born and raised in Oneonta, people who came to Oneonta, people who lived in Oneonta, famous people who visited Oneonta, in their prime, something like that. There was someone mentioned that Red Skelton had done like a show at the Oneonta Theater or something, so do we memorialize that experience? So there will be, some more discussion on that for sure, but I know that that's something that they would like to do. They discussed two types of public art a little bit, which is basically prescribed, where we say we want a sculpture here and call for artists in that way, versus submitted, where we say we have this location, what does it say to you, what do you want to do with it, kind of thing, and then, where we vet that. We also discussed permanent versus temporal, what spaces would be good for, changing artwork. So, for example, they want to do the vinyl wraps on the, utility boxes and things, and that's a great place to switch those up every, year, few years. Versus for example, the Statue of Liberty in the park that's been there forever. And then they also discuss arts as tourism, so not just what's important to the community, but how do we leverage that and get people to come here to visit our art. We discussed the public safety mural, and they had an opportunity to speak with Chief Knapp a little bit about that. So that's on the map as a place to do, have some public art. They also discussed Foothills, which is kind of a hub and has that huge wall, and how do we do that? Someone from the commission is going to reach out to the board at Foothills to get them on board. There was kind of this meandering discussion around the poet laureate position. So Commissioner Spitzoff is sort of taking the lead on that. I think the biggest question with that is about residency. Someone asked a very prescient question, which is, do we have enough published poets in the city to be able to sustain the program? Typically, a poet laureate is a resident of the place where they are the laureate. Also, one of the criteria for being a poet laureate is that you are a published poet. So, it's usually like a yearly appointment. They talked about like every 2 years. But thinking about if we have 5, then that's 10 years. We can poet laureate program, or we're just cycling back through the same ones, which is fine. We can do that. But I think that was a really insightful question to ask, to be able to say okay, let's flesh this out a little bit and see what it looks like. I've been in touch with Bob Benson, who is the person who brought the poet laureate program forward, and I plan on putting him in contact with Kathy Spitzoff to be able to just have that conversation together and move that forward. Last week, actually not second to last, there was a conversation about alley beautification. And so maybe we can get some more information on that. But basically, you know, tables and art and lighting to be able to make those spaces a little bit more welcoming, a little bit more inviting in terms of being downtown and safer. There was some conversation around, you know, since those alleys belong, you know, who does that property belong to? You obviously need the permission of the building owners. You know, it sounded like something where maybe we could get an easement if we wanted to do, like, the city could do it, similar to what we have on the agenda today, Ford Block. There was some support for a bid, a business improvement district among that conversation, because it sort of makes dealing with multiple business owners a little bit easier to have sort of a single point of contact to go to. That was really the extent of that conversation. And just taking it one section at a time. So there's the alley that's between the old John Island building and Community Bank, which was talked about sort of at length, because it's the largest, widest one, the most visible one, like really part of Main Street and what the possibilities for that could be. But really just taking it one section at a time and trying to figure out how do we beautify this. And then fully lastly, there was a question about the Ford sales demo. Do we have any update on that? And I wasn't there, but I said no to myself, to my house. And that's it.
I just want to say one thing, if possible. Sure. Katie, as far as the alley beautification project, that's something I'd really love to work with you on.
Cool.
It's something that I really would love to see happen, like a better lighting, or, you know, and I've talked about even with the OCI grants, maybe the one behind Roots, like how could, you know, I've been talking with our manager and my husband about it and other building owners, so.
Cool.
I'm happy, like, yeah, moving forward, keep, you know,
Yes.
keep in touch about it. 'Cause I'd love to work on it.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions, comments?
So the draft that was handed off to you and the mayor, you feel pretty confident that it's...
Pretty close. So after the meeting, since the meeting, I've been included in a couple emails that basically say, like, who wants to get together and finalize this thing? So I would say that by the next public arts meeting, it can be voted on and as a final draft, because then it has to come here to be approved. But yeah.
So you're close to being a final draft?
Yeah. That's my impression. I'm not working on it, so that's what I hear from the people who know.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry. Sorry.
You're on the spot now. You guys
Speak
can
up.
take a question.
Moving then on to the legislative committee, and Councilmember Rafter, back up.
Good night.
You already did that.
You were on the legislative committee, yeah.
Oh, so,
And you did zoning.
He's
Yeah,
reported legislative during.
oh, you did, you folded it in.
Oh, okay.
Very crafty of you, John.
Yeah, we're gonna let you off the hook. I think we got it all. Unless there's something that you see in your legislative committee notes that you didn't cover.
You're not legislative, weren't you?
Yeah, we already talked about legislative.
Are crafty, you are, if nothing else, crafty. Finance and Human Resources Committee, Councilmember Carson.
We met Monday, June 13th. All committee members are present. Before you are some, not all of our agenda on the consent. I'm really excited about our discussion of 8. If you have any questions about motion number 7 on tonight's agenda, we need to talk about specifically. We're going to have to go into executive session for that one. But our DPW Superintendent Chris was very thorough in explaining
motion number 5 to us. Is there anybody that has any questions on motion number 5? You can answer now if you try to explain. And then, any questions on motion number 3 for the streets improvements? Okay. Hearing none?
Very good. Okay, well, thank you very much. And with that, we will go to Councilmember Murphy, who I know is in attendance at the Community Wellness Committee.
Yes.
With Councilmember Davies out today.
Yes.
Take that.
And Councilmember Falco, if I have any gaps, please fill me in, or not fill me in, help me fill that in.
Sure.
We had a pretty productive meeting. Emily, myself, and Mark Davies were there, as well as Chief Knapp and Chief Witzenberg and Carrie. So the 6 of us that were there, and the mayor. And we were really talking about, we're really trying to get together, put together a summit to be held at the first approximate weekend in August. We don't have the exact date yet. To focus on a few of the really kind of the areas that are some of the gaps in care and services we provide in the community, and trying to get a bunch of stakeholders together, hopefully at Studionia at one of the conferences there. And Councilmember Davies is working on an approximate outline to go out. He is hoping, I believe, to get that out this week, Emily, if I wasn't mistaken, in the imminent future. And we'll have a little bit more detail. But this meeting was primarily really devoted to focusing on what we really wanted to get out of this summit. And it's, we're still working on it, but it's really to look for areas that we have some great service providers in the community, but there's always going to be cracks, and see where the city and perhaps these service providers can come up together and help to hopefully fill in some of the cracks. How do you do?
Perfect. No. Thank you.
Anything else that you want to add?
No, that was it. I feel like it was a really, we made a lot of progress. It was a good meeting.
Yep.
Came out of it feeling very strong.
Any questions or comments from council? No.
And once we have an official date, we'll be sure, or Mark or Emily, we'll be sure to let you know when that is.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Luke. And we move now on to the city administrator's report.
Thanks, Mayor. The city has been working on diligently, our finance and HR departments primarily, a new timekeeping and payroll system implementation known as UKG. We're hoping to have that go live within the next month or so. It's been a lot of effort, especially I got to give a shout out to Dave Corey, probably more than anyone has spent a lot of hours on that, along with Jenny and Joe and Katie and others as well. So we'll be rolling that out soon. That'll present a lot of time savings for various departments. People are inputting payroll now, taking hours, days at a time, every payroll period. A lot of that will be eliminated or reduced. It'll be a big efficiency gain for us. At our next CLIC meeting, Quality of Life Infrastructure Committee, on June 27th, we intend to have on the agenda a community development quarterly update. We talked about having those. I wasn't sure if we definitely wanted that at the CLIC meeting. That seemed to make sense to me. So if there's general concurrence here, we'll include that. Judy and I will give an update there. We've got a lot of grants ongoing, upcoming grant opportunities we'll be applying for. We want to explain to you some of which have to do with water infrastructure that we're seeking funding for, so I'm sure we'll be excited to hear about those. Current employment opportunities, we're accepting full-time applications for a full-time water plant operator trainee, full-time MEO or HEO, that's motor equipment or heavy equipment operator in DPW, and also a full-time administrative specialist in the code department. Police officer exam was just announced to be held September 17th. Please spread the word. Put that on our website if anyone wants to apply. Big thanks to the code office, along with help from Gene Russell from our buildings and grounds crew and contractor. They were able to successfully clean up and secure 3 Hill Place, which had been a topic of community concern with the amount of debris that had been deposited in the backyard and the house itself. A big parcel that's now boarded up and secure. We have a couple of upcoming fire department retirements. Captain Rob Lauderet, who's retiring after 30 years with OFD. His final walkout is this Friday, June 24th at 8 o'clock a.m. Shift. Also, firefighter Pete Barbario, who most recently served as a crew leader for a number of years. His final walkout will be Monday, June 27th at 8. Pete's been a 39-year employee of the fire department. I wish them happy retirements and thank them for their many years of service. Another thanks to OPD and the coordinating agencies for their good work in making arrests in connection with the recent murder. Special thanks to New York State Police. They provided a lot of assistance in that effort. Several public works updates. We have remaining 2021 sidewalk replacement bid work that is underway. Contractors have been replacing various sections of sidewalk throughout the city, as I'm sure you've noticed. Inwell Park, Millrace, Greenway Trail, which Katie mentioned. Paving is underway. They've completed the binder installation. There's still a top layer to go and final restoration. Wayfinding signs through the DRI Department of State contract. Those have been ordered on order for a while now. We expect delivery sometime in mid-July. We expect to see DPW installing those in the months coming after that. I think there'll be 52 signs to install. They all get installed in concrete. They're all over the center city, downtown area. It's going to take quite a while to fit within our existing schedule, but we'll work our way at it. And by the end of this year, we should have them all in for sure. Street restoration projects, including crack sealing, micro paving, fiber mat, and milling and paving, are being scheduled for this summer, July and August, possibly into September, depending on contractor schedules. That's some of that work is included in, I think, it's item number 3 or 5, number 3 tonight that we're establishing budgets for. West Street reconstruction continues. I'd say that's progressing as well as a street reconstruction project like that can. They're on schedule. As of right now, we don't see anything that should stop that from being completed on time, which is just before college freshmen move in. Should knock on wood. Market Street transportation improvements, that's for the project we're calling the parking garage renovations, the transit hub, the streetscape improvements, all those DRI projects, along with one. Wendell and the city team have gotten together in the last couple of weeks and working diligently on trying to finalize a preferred conceptual option for that. We have a conceptual plan that was already done. We're now narrowing that down, really hammering out some of the details. And we are tentatively planning a council presentation for August 2nd, where we'll present a schematic design plan along with an updated cost estimate, solicit the council's feedback. We're not looking for any decisions on that night. We'll just be probably coming back and discussing further either at committee meetings or the next council meeting. Obviously, there will be some budget implications. We'll have to talk about what our next steps are after that. Once we get some concurrence on the schematic design, they'll progress Wendell Road further into detailed design around 50 or 75%. Another council meeting where you can get some more feedback on some of the more aesthetic aspects of it, such as materials and colors, other things that you might want to look at. That's all I have. Is there any questions?
Yes. After the 2 retirements from the fire department, what was that? Legal numbers at?
Are we getting our new recruits will be back from August?
That's for the beginning of August, they'll be in service, but we'll still be down 1 person, 2 budgeted shifts, I believe.
Okay. We're going through a list of those who took firefighter exam now, see if we might go offer new positions.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions for Bill?
Craig, just a point of clarification. Pete Barbario actually served as a fire captain recently. He's been a cool leader for quite some time, but he's stepped in for fire department as a fire captain. With regards to the 5th Ward and Mrs. Lavelle, are you and Chris coming up with some options that you can kind of give the council as a whole, or I don't know what path you wanted to go through? You guys were, when she brought it up, I think she was here a month ago. She went here 2 weeks ago, so it was a month ago. We were going to start looking at some options. I think we had quickly identified a cost if we replaced just the water line. But just as I've been sitting here listening to her, I just, it's the conservationist in me. I wholly agree with her about the water, wasting the water. It's there any way that we can hook that up to like a water tender and at least reintroduce it back, maybe before the water treatment, so it has to go back through, but at least it wouldn't be going down through the stormwater? Or, you know, is there another way of connecting the line back in? I don't know if the Department of Health has to chime in on this, if we can flow the water, because that seems to be the issue, is flowing the water, causing to get the turbulation. I don't know what the correct word was. But just anyways, if we can get some solutions, and if with her here, if we could just provide her with a kind of time period when we're going to come up with some options.
Well, I mean, as Mrs. Lubell knows, we've been working on this issue for most of my career here. There's been issues, whether it's been on Sunset or College Terrace, and I'm not going to get into the complicated nature of it. It is complicated, and the issue kind of moves around depending on what we've done. We've made some improvements. Recent samples from hydrants in that area show excellent water quality. There obviously is still an issue at your service. We're getting some of that discolored water. You know, that's not something that's easily corrected, and it's not necessarily something that's corrected just by hydrant flushing. That's been evidence. I can't say right now if there's another solution, such as what you're talking about, that would do anything better, other than replacing or cleaning and lining the lines. Chris, Jay, for a jump in.
The only thing I wanted to add was there was at one time a circulator there where you move the water continuously around, but that's only circulating that circle, really. It's not getting new fresh water in that system.
It's not functional though.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention is we just submitted to the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund intended use plan last Thursday, I believe. So hopefully get on the list, and hopefully we'll qualify for some funding.
Yeah, that'll be something we'll talk a little bit more about in the quick meeting.
Right.
Just trying to wrap my head around the issue. Is this an issue where you've got high pressure trying to go to an intermediate pressure, and there's a pressure reducing pit there? That's the problem?
There are 3 pressure reducing valves that serve this general area of the system. Those in and of themselves are not the problem. It's not that simple, I guess.
So what's the actual problem? I mean, I understand turbidity. I know that's what's happening here, but what I'm not understanding is the cause of the turbidity. And I mean, I hear we're talking about replacing a line, but I'm also not understanding how that's going to solve the issue. So if you guys could, is there a quick way to explain this?
The biggest issue is they're essentially a dead-end line.
Right.
So they don't have a whole lot of flow. If there was a big user at the end of the line, it wouldn't be an issue, but they're on the end of, basically end of a loop, end of a line, and all the debris and sediment gets caught at that end. That's why we gotta continually flush it. We gotta look at some other options. I'm not sure what the right answer is, but certainly wasting finished water, not the best answer. But it's what we have to do for now until we can get the lines replaced, upgraded, and look into something else.
Well, if it's the end of the line and we're talking about just the solution would be just replacing the line, it sounds like that wouldn't solve the problem either.
The debris, the accumulation that is discoloring the water is the circulation to build up on the inside of the pipes. You replace the pipes with plastic pipes, you reline them with cement lining or some other sort of lining, that kind of goes away, reduces it greatly. That's going to improve the problem. Otherwise, you're always going to have this issue, and it's going to settle somewhere. And while it's not a physical dead end, it's the middle of the loop, but it kind of acts as a hydraulic dead end in a sense, because they're in the middle. There's really no getting around that.
Even with a plastic line, though, we're still going to have issues with chlorine residual. You have to have a certain amount of chlorine in the line to meet standards. And that's why we flush it, to get the turbulation out, clean up the turbidity, and to get chlorination in there.
This might be a question for Greg and Judy. I'm sure you both have considered this. I was just curious if you had any information about it. I know, I think at the federal level, there was like a $65 billion infrastructure bill passed. Is that anything we can tap into, apply for in terms of grants, or is that totally above our?
No, we've actually, and we'll talk about this next week at the click. We'll have the whole update. But we have water and sewer projects, plural, that we just got in for listing for that money.
Okay, thank you.
But it takes time,
Yeah.
so.
Any other questions for Rick? Okay, thank you very much. And that takes us to the mayor's remarks. So I join everyone in this room and all the citizens of Oneonta in extending our heartfelt thanks and appreciation to Chief Witzenberg and the Oneonta Police Department. Sorry, he's not here. They've given us resolution and a chance for closure. Thank them for their dedication and their commitment. And I know the chief would be the first to say that it was a collaborative effort. And that's what I want to focus on just a few minutes before we continue the meeting. From the colleges to businesses, agencies, institutions, surrounding communities, and our neighbors, we're seeing an unprecedented level of collaboration and community engagement in making Oneonta and the area a better place. Shout out to Mayor Chilipaw of Cooperstown. This past Thursday, I was at the groundbreaking ceremonies for the paved trail along the mill race. 20 years after the first group of folks committed to the project, it's becoming reality because of the Future for Oneonta Foundation, the city, and Susquehanna Greenway Committee all coming together as partners for planning and funding and construction. And Juneteenth in the park, that was wonderful this year. Again, a partnership of community members, the city, and the Community Foundation of Otsego County. The Telephone of the Wind project, very cool. So the city collaborating to bring a very sweet notion and a place of love and comfort into Wilbur Park. There's a hunger, I believe, to work together on big and important things locally, and not the least of those is Oneonta's housing. So I can tell you, since we were together a couple of weeks ago, I can report that over 20 people have volunteered to join one of our 7 work groups and our review panel and commission, and folks are still contacting me. Which gives me confidence that we will muster the talents, the insight, and the creative problem solving to meet this challenge and solve it. And I hope to have the proposed membership of the Housing Commission for your vote at our July meeting. It might be the second meeting in July, but in July. Moving in the right direction, folks. And together, we are going to make quite a difference. So thank you. That's it for me. And unless somebody's got a question on me, we'll move on to the agenda. Starting with the consent agenda and the approval of the minutes, the motion that the Common Council approves the minutes of the regular meeting held June 6th, 2022. Approval of the warrants, the motion that the Common Council approves the warrants totaling $965,681.51, and that the same be placed on the Director of Finance's desk for agreement as presented. From the Finance and Human Resources Committee, motion that the Common Council authorizes the establishment of several 2022 streets capital improvement projects which will be funded by a combination of funds provided from various state funding programs, and to authorize the estimated project budgets and necessary budget amendments and transfers as follows. Appropriation account H16.511.221, pavement maintenance, 2022, $285,000. Funding source, New York State aid, CHIPS and EWR, $285,000. Appropriation account H16.5112.222, pavement rehabilitation, 2022, $120,000. Funding source, the New York State aid, Pave New York, $120,000. Appropriation account H16.5112.223, Silver Creek Culverts under Center Street and Clinton Street replacement, 2022, $710,000. Funding source, New York State aid, STR, $710,000. Motion 4, that the Common Council approves the purchasing agent's recommendation to award the unit price bid for the 2022 transit mixed concrete, the lowest responsive qualified bidder, Cranesville Block Company Incorporated out of Amsterdam, New York. Motion number 5, that the Common Council authorizes the mayor to enter into the proposed agreement dated March 18th, 2022 with Northeast Timber Services, Walton, New York, as the city's forestry agent, and further authorizes a waiver from provisions of the city's purchasing policies and procedures manual relative to professional services. This agreement is subject to the approval of the city attorney. Motion number 6, that the Common Council authorizes the mayor to sign a contract amendment with Delaware Engineering, DPC, Oneonta, New York, for additional services including geotechnical investigations and environmental hazards survey and testing related to the contract for demolition specifications, bid documents, and required documentation for State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO, in connection with the demolition of 27 Market Street building approved by council on November 3rd, 2020, to be funded by the Restore New York grant funds for a cost not to exceed $22,330, subject to the approval of the city attorney. And motion number 7, that the Common Council authorizes the mayor to execute a memorandum of agreement between the City of Oneonta Professional Firefighters 2408 IAFF, assigning employee number 024229 to light effective duty on July 1. And that ends our consent agenda. Are there any items for removal? And Luke, what would you like to move?
Yes, I'd like to say this with a caveat. I apologize because I just thought of a question, quick question, number 5, please.
Number 5. Any others? Luke?
1 and 6.
Okay, Dave, 1 and 6. 6. Any others for removal? All right. In that event, do we have a motion to approve? Thank you, Glenn and Paul.
Second.
And Kate will follow. And then if we could take the vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Risberger?
Aye.
Councilmember LaFasia?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Rattner?
Yes.
Councilmember Foster?
All right, terrific. And then we're going to go to motion 1. We're just going to take these in order. Motion to approve.
So moved.
And seconded by Lynn. And Dave, you pulled this?
Yeah, it's cool because I wasn't here for that meeting.
Says your house.
For the June 6th meeting?
So June 6th, says your house.
Yeah, I wasn't here for June 6th, so that's why I'm not
So you're not going to vote on it?
going to.
All right, very good.
Change.
Beyond Dave not being here, not being able to vote, any further discussion on this? All right, so vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Risberger?
Abstain.
Councilmember LaFasia?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rattner?
Yes.
Councilmember Foster?
Okay, moving on to motion number 5. Do we have a motion to approve? And Lynn? Okay, so, and it was Luke?
Yes. Two things. One, I wanted to thank Chris and Greg for going back. I reread the contract and appreciate you putting it in there. A second question is, and if it was in there, maybe I missed it. I saw there was a blankage for the acreage of how much would be taken. Do you know approximately how much lumber would be harvested in terms of acres or board foot?
That will be quantified once this contract is executed. He'll have to go through the forest and calculate the board footage.
Okay.
That's what the bid for the timber harvest itself will be based on.
And would we have the opportunity to approve or disapprove of that contract going forward?
Greg?
The city will have to approve or award a contract. Yeah, so not to.
That's all.
Okay, any further discussion? You call the vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
No.
Councilmember Risberger?
Aye.
Councilmember LaFasia?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rattner?
Yes.
Councilmember Foster? Aye.
That motion carries. And do we have a motion to approve number 6? That's Luke. Somebody please. Thanks. Got it. All right, and again, Dave, that was you, Dave, that pulled that?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a little bit more information of what's happening with this and why we're needing the additional services from Bill Engineering and Building?
So these services are not actually performed by Dell Engineering, but sub-consultants for a geotechnical analysis of soil borings to determine, as part of the demolition will also be stabilization of the bank along Chestnut Street Extension, so doing some analysis of the soil there is necessary, as we did 3 or 4 borings, get a geotechnical report on that. As part of that, the other part was lead and asbestos sampling and testing and report just the west of the building. Both weren't part of Delaware's base scope of work. Their scope originally was for developing the specifications and drawings, so the additional testing was.
So how long is this going to delay the eventual demo?
The work is already underway.
Okay.
So it will delay the progress.
Okay.
What is delaying the project, or has progress on hold now, is just the lack of funding for the project, which we're continue talking about. We applied for additional funding through the CFA process, so we're kind of in a holding pattern until we figure out the.
Got it. All right, thanks.
To answer your question.
Any other questions or further discussion? Okay, we'll vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Risberger?
Aye.
Councilmember LaPartie?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Felton?
Aye.
Terrific. All right, now, motion that the common council appoints Donald Toubier to the position of fire captain, effective June 27, 2022, at a base annual salary of $64,220. IAFF salary Schedule D1, subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements. Do I have a motion to approve? I've got Len, I've got Scott, I've got everybody, I guess, if I look around. Do we have some discussion on the topic?
I have waited a long time for this day to show.
You can draw this out a while.
This is a procedural question. You know, obviously I do not have a vision in the future. I think I have a pretty good idea of how this goes. Can we have a brief, like, post-motion, not discussion, but comment, or no? I guess I want to say congratulations about this.
Yeah, I think you're fine. It's part of your discussion. Why should we be congratulating? Question.
Okay, I guess prematurely, but congratulations.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I haven't voted on it yet.
I know that, David.
And I was watching Dave's face over there.
I sit quietly until somebody pulls the trigger. When you say, to close my body until it's necessary.
All right, in that case, if there's no further discussion, clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember LaPartie?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Emphatically, yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
I was gonna say ditto, but yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Felton? Aye. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Really is one of the nice things about this job. Really is. Now we'll move on to a supplemental agenda that you've already received and have in front of you. And we'll take these one at a time with motion number 9. That the common council authorizes the mayor to sign an easement together with such other documents as may be necessary and convenient for the recording the same from Ford Block LLC to the city of Oneonta from Main Street through the Ford Block building commonly known as the Arcade to Road Street, together with the use by pedestrians of any elevator subsequently installed, and also retaining the right of the city to keep and maintain security cameras within the easement. Do I have a motion to approve? So moved. So I'm going to go with Dave and Luke there. And do we have discussion? Yes, Len.
So, what I'm about to bring up goes with either 9, 10, or 11, and this is going to be towards David or Greg or whoever wants to take it. So, within the document that was handed out electronically to the council, if it's here, I apologize that I'm missing it, but I remember the discussion with Springbrook that the cleaning costs would be split. Well, with regards to the elevator, are we splitting the cost of maintaining the elevator annually? Because I'm not seeing that within this document.
This has only to do with the title. This is not easement, it doesn't have anything to do with the,
Right, but moving on to 10 or 11, David, we're getting down into the nitty-gritty now where money is coming from public.
again, you talked to Judy about that, but that agreement has to do with a separate agreement between the city and Springbrook, and doesn't have anything to do with anything that's here.
Right, so again, whether you
Since they're asking for money for us, it's,
do we have an official document somewhere that says that we're splitting the cost for the maintaining the legacy cost with the elevator? I understand the upfront cost is us, but are we sharing that cost?
The intent,
Go ahead.
the intent is to split the cost, yes. That has not been approved by the council yet. That'll be a future motion to come with a.
yeah, it was going to be a separate contract. But if you recall, it came before the council and they approved us to enter it, to prepare an agreement to that effect. That agreement has not yet been drafted. It will come to the council for approval.
By saying yes to 10 or 11, are we bypassing that?
No, it just, this is allowing to get the construction going. Between now and the time they actually finish it and we start paying for the maintenance of the elevator, when they start actually using it, that'll be done.
And I think
It'll be
consistent also is that the HVAC system, I would like to see green. I would like to see air source for cooling and for heating. And I'm wondering, Greg, do you have to say on, are you participating in any conversation with them on this? Just would like to see us have some kind of say on the type of system that's going to be in there, the most energy efficient.
Yeah, I mean, just from my perspective, when the council agreed to spend the $411,000 on this project, there wasn't any discussion about any particulars such as that. So we didn't have any of those discussions with Springbrook as they developed their design plans. So I have not reviewed their design plans. The code office has, as part of their code review for the permit, which has been conditionally issued to the contractor. So I can't say what exactly HVAC improvements they're doing. Anything they're doing obviously has to be meeting code. I do believe there are HVAC improvements on the project, but I can't say what they are, and we have any control over both those.
So why don't we have control? Because ultimately that's what we're getting at here is, why are we not having control of making that decision? If that space is ours,
Well, the space is theirs, and we're getting an easement to access, have public access continue through it. I suppose, I would defer to David that the council could say we're not paying $411,000 unless there are certain conditions met, but those have not been discussed over the past year and a half. And that would be, I think, quite a shock to Springbrook to bring up at this point. But that's not my fault.
I remember the elevator being like $311,000.
I don't think it's that much better.
The elevator? Yeah, I remember when they did the presentation, we were on a Zoom meeting, it was like 311, somewhere in that ballpark. So that's why the 411 was not a shock to me. That obviously leaves just $100K for the HVAC and painting and whatever renovations they want to do in that space. But I just would like to see us have some kind of say in that space for the heating and cooling. I mean, especially after, I've said this before at our finance meeting, with Councilmember LaParge, and I think we were the only ones, right? Anyways, that we walked through and saw that the HVAC was up on the roof and the steel pipe was what's leaking down from the roof down into our space. That's not really energy efficient. It's not really green. So,
Should it start maybe with our finding out what their plans may be?
and I know I said something to Seth about this, both publicly and privately, that I want to make sure that we're having some kind of say about this.
So let's see what they are strategizing to start with, and we can bring that back to this group or committee and have a full conversation.
Does that work, right?
I would like to petition Springbrook and ask for some details on what they're doing. They're see and report back.
Just to get a baseline.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'd be surprised if they weren't thinking just along the same lines you are, right? So, but we'll see. So I've lost my thread. Did we wind up? We're still in conversation here, okay. Any further conversation on this, any further discussion? All right, then let's call the roll.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Roseberry?
Yes.
Councilmember LaPartio?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
Aye.
I take this to motion 10, that the common council authorizes the mayor to sign a development agreement with Springbrook, New York Incorporated to provide a one-time reimbursement of up to $411,000 to Springbrook for renovations and improvements to the public walkway, commonly known as the Arcade, including installation of a public elevator located at 186-212 Main Street. The funding source will be New York State DOS Downtown Revitalization Initiative grant funds. This agreement shall be subject to the approval by the city attorney. And do we have a motion to approve? And then, okay. And discussion? No discussion? Then we'll call the vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Roseberry?
Yes.
Councilmember LaPartio? Aye. Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
We move on to motion 11, that the common council authorizes the mayor to approve and sign a public elevator and walkway contractor agreement between Eastman Associates, the contractor, and Springbrook, New York Incorporated, the grantee, to allow the contractor to make renovations and improvements to the public walkway commonly known as the Arcade, including installation of a public elevator located at the grantee's property of 186-212 Main Street. This agreement shall be subject to approval by the city attorney. Do we have a motion to approve? Luke? And Emily. And then discussion. Luke?
Just real quick, I was gathering my thoughts. Just for the record, want to express my appreciation for Councilmember Carson bringing energy efficiency to the conversation. Appreciate it.
Any further conversation on this? Not, then we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Roseberry?
Yes.
Councilmember LaPartio? Aye. Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
Aye.
Terrific. Now, do we have any additional business or anything for council discussion? No? All right. Do we have any correspondence? No correspondence. Is there a need for executive session? There's no need for executive session.
Mayor, yeah, I got one quick issue. It's not an issue, just a question for Greg. Greg, we had talked before in the past about having a representative from Y come to the Quality of Life Infrastructure Committee, and they weren't able to come last month. Do you know if they're coming next week?
I will confirm, but I believe that Frank indicated.
Okay. That was, for everybody that wants to know, that was to give us an update or have a discussion about summer programming so we better understand the needs that are out there and the requirements that are out there. Things have changed in the years since Oregon has had summer programming.
Anything else for council discussion? And if not, then